Feeling low on energy? Before you grab that second cup of coffee or that chocolate bar for a quick pick-me-up, you might want to think twice about how much sugar you're consuming. If we're not careful, our sugar intake may become less than healthy, leaving us at risk of diabetes, heart disease, and more. But not all sugar is bad. And when consumed moderately, it's actually a good source of energy for your body. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We all get sugar cravings. It can be addictive, but when consumed excessively, it can have adverse effects on our health. Our guests are here today to tell us more. With us is Dr. Maria Feliz Gomez Tuazon. She's an endocrinologist from the University of Santo Tomas Hospital and Capital Medical Center. Also with us is Joe Sebastian, who's a registered nutritionist, dietitian, and coach in the Rebel Fitness app. We hear a lot of information and misinformation about how sugar can impact our health. Some even say that eliminating it from our diets will improve our overall well-being. However, it's a vital source of energy for our body. Of course, though, not all sugar is created equal. I'll start the conversation with Coach Joe. Are there any good sugars for us? And if so, which ones could they be? Kaya, could you give some examples for our viewers?
When we say sugar, it's not just your table sugar. It's also all sugars that you get from carbohydrates. Carbohydrates break down into glucose, fructose, galactose, which is scientifically terms called sugar, diba? And that's your main energy source. So sugars are essential for your body, especially for the preferred source of energy. So carbohydrates, high fiber carbs especially, will be very helpful for you when it comes to your energy levels.
Now, what are some examples, kaya Coach Joe, ng mga sugars that aside from that na nilalagay sa asukal, what other forms of sugar are there that could be beneficial for one's body?
Well, of course, we go to our complex carbohydrates. So you have your potatoes, you have rice, higher fiber rice as well, rolled oats, you have some whole wheat bread, you also have sweet potatoes, corn. These are your carbohydrate sources that turn into sugar. Not necessarily a bad thing. Then you also have your added sugars. So that's your white sugar, brown sugar, cane sugar, agave, honey, all of those things. The difference or how we look into it of what is good and bad is more on the amount that we consume on a regular basis and not necessarily the specific type. Although we do want to maximize or use more of our high fiber carbohydrates when we can.
Fructose and lactose are sugars that we don't have to worry too much about because these foods have nutrients that our body needs. On the other hand, there are sugars that we should try to avoid, like the sugar found in candy, soda, as well as cake. Dr. Feliz, tell us more about this and what are some of the common sources of it? Bakit hindi pa rin masyado clear kaya with majority of people what sugar is what and what is healthy for the body?
Sugar is a form of carbohydrate and contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecules. So when carbohydrates are consumed, they are digested and broken down into glucose. These serve as the prepared energy for cells throughout the human body, including your brain and central nervous system. So complex carbohydrates are formed from 3 or more sugar molecules, whereas simple carbohydrates are composed of either one sugar molecule, either monosaccharide or 2 disaccharides. So the 4 most common forms of simple sugars include your glucose, fructose, aka the fruit sugar, sucrose, aka your table sugar, and lactose, aka your dairy sugar.
But many replace these highly processed sugars that was mentioned earlier with natural sweeteners, like using honey instead of yung white sugar or yung table sugar. Coach Joe, is this actually better for our health using natural sugars? Is there a big benefit from substituting one table sugar for this?
Actually, when you have honey and table sugar, there isn't much of a difference in terms of their impact into your blood sugar levels. It does depend on the amount. While honey might have antioxidants and other things to offer, you have to eat a lot of honey for you to get those benefits. So at the end of the day, sugar is sugar, whether that's table sugar or honey. It's the amount that we consume that we have to give more of a view or a look into rather than the specific type when it comes to these types of sugars.
And while we can do without added sugar altogether, consuming it in small amounts is relatively fine. But the thing is, many of us have too much of it. But first, we mentioned that sugar is a vital source of energy. Dr. Felice, pag-usapan natin ito, ano ba yung role talaga ng sugar natin sa body?
So sugar, which is the form of carbohydrate, when broken down to glucose, serve as the preferred energy source for all the cells throughout the human body, including your brain and central nervous system. So glucose travels to the cells of the body where it is converted to your energy used out to carry out various functions such as muscle contraction, and temperature regulation. While some organs can use protein and fat for energy, remember that your red blood cells and the brain exclusively use glucose for energy. So a certain amount of carbohydrate intake is necessary for normal brain and bodily function.
Dr. Felice, yung mga gustong mag-give up ng sugar altogether, they try to avoid this. Is this actually possible? Can a person survive na zero sugar, absolutely zero sugar sa katawan?
Actually, most of the diet are already with mixed diet, meaning there's a little sugar, there's a little protein, there's a little fat. So it is impossible to really make your diet completely zero sugar. There is at least little percentage. Like we also recommend for patients who are diabetics and those with other heart problems to have sugar in moderation only. Okay? Because everything you take in moderation is healthy. But if you take it in excess, it will be detrimental for your body.
Now, we've heard time and time again that we should be consuming less sugar. And that's because too much added sugar affects the brain, your mood, and many more.
Yes.
And we'll talk more about this after a short break. So stay with us on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines, where caring is our calling. From desserts to savory food, cutting down your sugar intake can be difficult, and understanding how it can negatively impact our health can make a huge difference. Dr. Felice, let's discuss some of the disadvantages of too much sugar.
So eating too many foods with added sugar sets the stage for potential health problems such as, first, poor nutrition. If you choose sugar-laden foods instead of more nutritious foods, you miss out on important nutrients such as vitamins and minerals. Second is weight gain. There is no single cause for being overweight or obese, but added sugar might contribute to the problem. It's easy to get extra calories when eating food that are sugar sweetened. So obesity is also a risk factor for developing diabetes mellitus. And third, it also increases your triglycerides. Triglycerides are a type of fat in the bloodstream and fat tissue. So eating an excessive amount of added sugar can increase triglyceride levels, which may increase your risk for heart disease. And lastly, of course, if there's sweets, there's also tooth decay. So sugar promotes tooth decay by allowing bacteria to multiply and grow. The more often you eat or drink foods with natural sugar or added sugar, the more likely you are to get cavities.
Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the term sugar high. When you're feeling tired or not in the mood, our impulse is actually to reach for candy or even chocolate. But this can actually affect our mood in the long run. Coach Joe, could you tell us more about this? How does sugar affect yung mood ng tao?
Sugar usually affects our mood when it replaces our usual meals. If it replaces your more balanced meal, replaces your vegetables, replaces your fruits, that's when it can usually have an impact sa ating mood, diba? Especially because you have that boost of that carbohydrates, and then it slowly brings us down. So what we want to have is a more steady supply of energy throughout the day, and usually that can come from more balanced meals. So not necessarily to remove the sugar, but to make sure it doesn't replace other nutrients we have, so we have a more steady energy throughout the whole day, and that can overall improve your mood.
Now, Coach Joe, pag-usapan natin about the link between sugar and that of joint pain. So a lot of our viewers, could it be that they're feeling some joint pain, some arthritic pain? Is this possibly related to sugar as well? Could you explain that part?
There could be a possibility to relate those two. However, we do see that most of the time, what we really notice from a lot of high consumption of sugar is really what it replaces in your diet. And one of the things we see is we tend to really move towards higher sugar foods and we forget about the other nutrients. So with the lack of nutrients that we get from other food items, nagkakaroon ng deficiencies. And with those deficiencies, nagkakaroon talaga tayo ng mga complications which can be anywhere from joint pain to mood fog, fatigue, and all of these other aspects. So what we have to look into is making sure that our sugary foods does not replace the other nutrients that our body really needs for us to be able to make sure that we're having all of our functions moving and doing the things they need to do.
Dr. Felice, how does sugar or excess sugar for that matter, may link din ito sa condition ng ating heart? What is the connection with this, Dr. Felice?
Added sugar or excess dietary carbohydrates may increase your glucose levels and may lead, of course, to obesity. And obesity will be a risk factor to develop diabetes. And of course, if a patient becomes diabetic, it increases the risk for heart attack, for 2 times increased heart attack. So there's always a correlation between heart disease and diabetes. I would like to add regarding eating more vegetables and lean meat is also good for the body because it has low glycemic index, and food or sugars with low glycemic index are really healthy for the body because it gives us lower rise in the blood sugar level of the body, which is beneficial for your body needs.
Kapag ang isang tao ay na-diagnose with diabetes, especially diabetes type 2, is it possible to revert back to a normal state, or once na-diagnose sila, ito na yung a lifelong condition nila?
Diabetes, yung tinatawag nga nila, yan ang pinaka-loyal na sakit. Hindi ka niya iiwan. So usually, once na-diagnose na diabetes, you're diabetes for life. However, you can manage it and do special precautions to maintain a normal target blood sugar. So meaning, you have to do regular exercise, lifestyle modification, and proper diet. So that's it. And always remember, usually diabetes is also a genetic disorder. If one of your parents has diabetes, there's 40% chance of you having a diabetes. And if both parents are diabetics, you have 60% chance of developing diabetes. However, if you have good lifestyle, proper diet, you can prevent it.
Experts say that eating sugar stimulates pathways in the brain that are associated with feelings of pleasure and reward. And these effects are similar to that of substance use. More on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. We'll be right back. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. When we consume added sugar, different parts of our body take notice, from our joints to our heart and even our brain. Now, sugar stimulates pathways in the brain that are associated with feelings of pleasure, and it's not unlike how our body processes addictive substances. Dr. Felice, if sugar is very addicting, is this one of the reasons kung bakit para sa mga ibang tao, napakahirap bitawan ang pag-consume ng mga added sugars?
Actually, there are several studies recently, still ongoing investigation wherein sugar is recorded to be likely to be a substance abuse disorder, but currently it is not yet proven. However, they say that it is addictive because when you take in sugar, or you mean when they break down to glucose, glucose goes towards your brain and affect the dopaminergic system. And there is a reward pleasure pathway in the brain. And when there is increase in sugar in the body, the sugar makes the person happy because of the reward dopamine pathway. So that's make addictive.
Now, we need to make a conscious effort in our day-to-day, of course, to cut down on added sugar. Coach Joe, could you share with us some tips, especially in how to cut down on added sugar in our day-to-day?
Okay, one thing that we do want to tap into, because there's also a mental health aspect to sugar. One of those aspects is that in disordered eating, a lot of the times, clients will have a struggle removing sugar because they have an all or nothing mentality. It's either I always eat sugar or I don't eat sugar at all. A lot of people have a tendency to binge on sugar because they feel like it's never going to be able to be eaten again. And so we have to remember, you're allowed to have these foods every single day. How much do you actually want or need to feel satisfied in that moment? And so what we can do is start pairing our sugary foods with more high fiber and more high protein foods to help balance out the release in insulin and help your reaction to it not feel like it's the end of the world last time you're going to be able to eat it. So that's some of the tips I would do is 1, don't restrict yourself completely. 2, add more fiber and add more protein. And also 3, don't give yourself the mentality that sugar is necessarily bad. It's still important. It's still something that is part of your taste buds and part of your relationships and family. So remember to just enjoy it, but try not to overdo it because you can always have it again next time.
Now, Dr. Feliz, when trying to minimize added sugar sa diet ng isang tao, it can be tricky, especially when you go to when people go to the grocery stores or sa palengke nila to buy certain things. A lot of items actually contain sugars. Are these artificial sweeteners actually healthier than regular sugar, yung mga sugar-free and things like that?
So artificial sweeteners are sweeteners, well, we call them empty calories. So actually, kaya most commonly they are used sa mga beverages. So for people who have increased risk for diabetes, like those who are already on pre-diabetic range of blood sugar, and of course to our diabetic patient that can't really control themselves from eating sugar foods, as what Coach Joe have mentioned, we do not tell them to gradually stop sugar. We do it in moderation, as long as we do it slowly so that hindi sila mag-relapse back to eating bunch of sugar. So we recommend them to use artificial sweeteners instead of yung mga table sugar natin na refined white sugar, brown sugar, because they have higher glycemic load that will be detrimental for the body.
Now, while that touch of sweetness might be tempting, making these small changes in your diet can improve your overall well-being. And with that, I'd like to thank endocrinologist Dr. Maria Feliz Gomez Tuazon and Coach Joe Sebastian for sharing with us your insights, and our viewers will definitely learn a lot, especially when it comes to sugar. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We'll see you again next time.